All right, let's talk neonatal jaundice. This is probably one of the most common things you're going to see on your pediatrics rotation. I mean, pretty much every baby gets a little bit yellow, right? But here's the million-dollar question. How do you know if it's just a normal thing or if it's a neurologic emergency just waiting to happen? So in this explainer, we're going to build that high-yield foundation you need. We'll hit the core physiology, the main causes, and the complications you absolutely, positively cannot afford to miss. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll take a trip through the Bilirubin Factory. You got to know how this stuff is made. Then we'll get into the really crucial part, telling the difference between normal and dangerous jaundice. After that, we'll clear up that super common and kind of confusing breastfeeding dilemma. And we'll wrap up by facing the neurologic nightmare we're all trying to prevent, which is, of course, Kernicterus. Okay, so first stop, the Bilirubin Factory. Look, if you want to understand why a newborn system gets so easily overwhelmed, you first have to get a handle on the normal assembly line. Because trust me, every single step is a potential point of failure. So let's meet the main villain of our story, unconjugated bilirubin, or UCB. Now, you can just think of it as this yellow, greasy waste product that comes from breaking down old red blood cells. But here's the key, the one thing you have to remember. It is lipid soluble. That means it's fatty. It hates water. And because it's fatty, it can sneak right across the fatty membrane that protects the brain, the blood-brain barrier. And that right there is what makes it so incredibly dangerous. So where does this stuff come from? Well, it all starts with the normal, everyday breakdown of red blood cells. The thing is, newborns are just little red blood cell recycling machines. They do this at a way higher rate than adults. That's problem number one right there. So as these RBCs pop open, they spill out their main ingredient, heme. Now this heme goes through a quick two-step change. First, it turns into a green pigment. That's called biliverdin. And then, almost instantly, that biliverdin gets turned into this yellow powder. And that's our guy, unconjugated bilirubin. This is literally the yellow stuff that seeps into the skin and makes babies look jaundiced. Okay, so remember how we said UCB is greasy and hates water? Well, that means it can't just float around in the bloodstream by itself. It would just clump up. So it needs a ride. It flags down this protein taxi called albumin. Albumin grabs onto the UCB, keeping it locked up and safely chauffeured through the blood so it can't wander off into the brain. And this is a really key point. Anything that makes albumin levels drop, like being born too early or having an infection, is a huge risk factor for brain damage. So where's this albumin taxi going? Its destination is the body's main processing plant, the big detox center, the liver. This is where all the magic is supposed to happen. Once it gets inside the liver, this super important enzyme, you gotta know this one, UGT1A1, it grabs that bilirubin and basically slaps a sugar molecule onto it. That whole process is called conjugation. And what does it do? It's genius, really. It transforms that dangerous, greasy, fat-soluble UCV into a totally harmless, water-soluble form. Now that it loves water, it can be easily dumped into the bile and pooped out. Problem solved. So why is this whole thing such a huge deal for newborns? Well, it's basically a perfect storm. You've got three big problems happening all at once. First, they're breaking down a massive amount of red blood cells, so they're just cranking out bilirubin like crazy. Second, their liver just isn't ready for prime time yet. That key enzyme, UGT1A1, is pretty sluggish, It's working at just a tiny fraction of what an adult's can do. And third, something called increased enterohepatic circulation. That's just a fancy way of saying that the bilirubin that does make it to the gut is way more likely to get reabsorbed back into the blood instead of just being pooped out. So think about it. Way more production, way less processing, and way more reabsorption. That is the classic recipe for jaundice. Okay, so now that you've got the physiology down, let's get to the clinic. This is our first major decision point. You walk into a room, there's a yellow baby looking at you. How in the world do you figure out if this is the normal, everybody gets it kind of jaundice, or if it's something way more sinister? So, back to the big question, is a yellow baby a sick baby? And the answer is, well, usually no. Most of the time, this is just a normal, temporary thing that almost all newborns go through. But, you know what? Usually doesn't cut it in medicine. We need solid rules to help us catch those dangerous exceptions. And here it is. This is probably the single most important rule you will ever learn about neonatal jaundice. It's all about the timing. If you see jaundice, any jaundice at all, in the first 24 hours of life, you stop everything. That is a massive red flag. It is the red zone. It is pathologic until you prove it's not, and you better start looking for a cause, usually something breaking down red blood cells like hemolysis. The normal physiologic stuff, That doesn't show up until after 24 hours. It usually peaks around day 3 to 5, and then it fades away. And here's another big red flag for you. You have to look at how fast the bilirubin is climbing. If that number is going up faster than 0.2 milligrams per deciliter per hour, that is way too fast. A rise that steep tells you the Bilirubin Factory is working in absolute overdrive, which, again, points straight to a pathologic process like hemolysis, and that needs a workup. All right, let's dive into something that can be a real clinical headache, something you'll see all the time: the breastfed baby who's just still yellow. The tricky part is there are two totally different things going on here, and you absolutely have to be able to tell them apart. Okay, this is perfect. Let's break this down. On one side, you have what we call breastfeeding failure jaundice. Honestly, a better name is not enough breastfeeding jaundice, or even starvation jaundice. This is all about not getting enough milk in those first few days. So the baby gets a little dehydrated, they're not pooping much, and remember that enterohepatic circulation, it kicks into high gear, and they just reabsorb a ton of bilirubin from their gut. The key clues? It happens early, we're talking days 2 to 5, and the baby's losing too much weight. Now, on the other side, you have breast milk jaundice. This is a totally different beast. This one shows up later, usually kicking in after day 7, and man, it can linger for weeks. But here's the difference. This baby is feeding like a champ, gaining weight beautifully, and is otherwise totally happy and healthy. The theory is there's actually some factor in the mom's milk itself that's making the baby's gut reabsorb more bilirubin. So remember, early with weight loss is a feeding problem. Late in a thriving baby is breast milk jaundice. And that brings us to our final section, and honestly, the most important one. This is the why. Why do we care so much? Why do we obsess over these bilirubin levels? It's because if that unconjugated bilirubin gets too high, it completely overwhelms all those albumin taxis, and the free, unbound bilirubin crosses into the brain and causes permanent, irreversible damage. This is the neurologic nightmare we are all fighting to prevent. The first phase of this brain injury has a name: Acute Bilirubin Encephalopathy, or ABE. You can think of this as the active poisoning phase. Bilirubin is actively damaging the brain right now. But here's the critical part. In its early stages, this can actually be reversible, but only if you jump on it aggressively and get that bilirubin level down. This is our window. This is our chance to prevent permanent damage. So what do you need to look for? What does ABA actually look like? Well, the scary thing is the early signs are really subtle. The baby might just be a bit too sleepy, a little floppy, hypotonic, not really interested in eating. But if you miss that, it progresses, and the signs become absolutely terrifying. The baby starts to have this high-pitched, piercing cry that you just can't console. They might start arching their neck back, that's called retrocollis. And then you see the classic, horrifying sign, opisthotonos. If you see opisthotonos, that is a 5-alarm neurologic emergency. And this is what it looks like. Opisthotonos is this severe, rigid arching of the entire back. The baby's head and their heels are bent way back, and their whole body bows forward. It's an unforgettable and awful thing to see. It's a classic sign that the central nervous system is being severely irritated by bilirubin poisoning. If you ever see this, you have to act now. You need to get that bilirubin down immediately. Because if you don't reverse that acute phase, it leads to this: Kernicterus. This is the chronic, permanent stage. The name itself literally means yellow kern, because pathologists found this deep yellow staining in parts of the brain, especially the basal ganglia. And let me be perfectly clear. This is not reversible. This is lifelong, devastating brain damage. And the damage from Kernicterus shows up as a classic set of 4 problems, the Kernicterus tetrad. First, you get a terrible movement disorder, a type of cerebral palsy called chorioethetoid CP. Second, an upward gaze palsy. The child literally can't look up. Third, sensory neural hearing loss, which can mean they are partially or even completely deaf. And fourth, you see problems with their dental enamel. This is the absolute tragedy we're working to prevent every single day. Okay, so let's boil this all down. What are the absolute must-know, can't-forget takeaways? Number 1, jaundice in the first 24 hours is always a red flag. Always. Number 2, for breastfeeding, just think hunger and early onset versus happy baby and late onset. And number 3, you have got to watch for those neurologic signs, especially that arched back, so you can jump in before ABE turns into permanent tragic kernicterus. Okay, so now you know the why. You know what's happening under the hood, and you know how to spot the danger signs.
But that leads to the next huge question, right? How do we actually manage this? How do we screen every single baby? How do we use those complicated-looking charts to plot their risk? And when do we finally decide to pull the trigger on treatment like phototherapy? Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover in part 2.